started here. Like I said, we got 2 minutes and then we're going to go. So, and so we're getting down to 1 minute left. I'm going to try something here. I might get in trouble. All right, we got a minute to go, folks.
I'm ready.
All right. Good evening, everybody. This is Jim Howard with Trinity Security Allies, where our ministry is your church's safety. Tonight, we're going to talk about a couple of things that we've been watching in the news and watching around the country. And to help me with tonight, I'm going to have my good friend and kind of cohort and a lot of crime that we do around here, Kevin Haggerty. I'm going to kind of base it on, we talk on Thursdays at 11 o'clock. True Christian Talk. You can come out and see us. And I kind of want to take a step back and just say this has been the day of computer failures. I mean, it has just been one thing after the other. We could not get our live podcast started today with Kevin and I. And so we had to record it and then he's going to put it out there so everybody can see it. But we talked about the HR 127, which is a completely different thing, which it talks about Firearms Licensing and Registration Act. It's a bill that everybody needs to be paying attention to. But what I want to do right now is bring my buddy out, Kevin Haggerty. So cross your fingers. Here we go. All right.
Hey, there
All
we
right.
are. How are you, Jim?
All right. Hopefully I got you now. So um we started a podcast. You and I started a podcast. We talked about this before about bringing people out and talking about things that we were seeing and how Christians should take a look at it.
Right.
Not really referring back to church safety like what I do, and you and I've had these conversations before, but to talk about how the today's Christians should be looking at what is going on in the world. And so I kind of wanted to bring some of those to light tonight because I really feel like TCT, True Christian Talk, is its own entity, and I want to
Right.
leave it there. But I do want to bring up that there are issues that churches need to face. And so the first thing that I wanted to talk about was Joe Biden came out with an executive order that was on advancing racial equity, not equality, equity, and support for underserved communities through the federal government. And so it goes off and you start reading it. It says, equal opportunity is the bedrock of American democracy. We can all agree with that. That sounds great. Beautiful words.
Mm.
And our diversity is one of our country's greatest strengths. But for far too many, the American dream remains out of reach. Entrenched disparities in our laws and public policies and in our public and private institutions have often denied that equal opportunity to individuals and communities. Our country faces convergent economic, health, and climate crises that have exposed and exacerbated inequities, while a historic movement for justice has highlighted the unbearable human cost of systemic racism. There's that word, systemic racism. And so when we see that, we're like, what the heck just happened?
So the uniting the uniting the unification efforts of Joe Biden are, I mean, there's an awful lot of strings attached to it. So the idea that we should do the things that the title says, right? And even that the text says, uh, we should be doing those things already. So the idea that we need a new law when we don't enforce the old laws, just like we talked about on TCT today, if we're not going to enforce the laws we already have, what good does it do except to pander to demographics, um, to create another law? And then the problem becomes, in doing so, you alienate by saying things like systemic racism, which is a very vague term, if you ask me. To me, it means that there are things embedded in the system that are that favor one race over another. So if that exists, then we should be able to fix it. If that exists, it already should not exist in America. But if it exists, uh, we should be changing those laws, right? But the I don't think my interpretation of systemic racism, that racism is inherent in our legal and judicial systems and social systems and things like that. I think they're talking more about like a subconscious racism that everyone struggles with. Uh, the idea of dividing ourselves to unite ourselves is just counterintuitive. So I don't want to take the whole show, but Martin Luther King said, "Judge." He hopes his kids will be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, which is what we've done for decades. And I think it bears fruit. I think we're a better nation than we were, say, in the 50s and 40s, right? Um, but now that plan, for whatever reason, isn't good enough for them anymore. And so now we need to, instead of not seeing the color of someone's skin, they want it to be the first thing an employer sees, or the first thing that I would see after, I have 3 kids, 2 of them in their 20s. I've been teaching them to judge people one at a time their whole lives. And now the government is asking us to begin to judge people as groups again. I just don't see how it's going to help anything, and that it would hurt things.
Well, and to kind of bring it back to how it's going to affect the churches, I think it's something that we need to look at because it doesn't say equality, it says equity.
Mm.
So it means like when I look at your organization, am I going to see an equal number of different, races, different sexes, different? If I go to your church's website, and I think this is where it kind of concerns me. The thing that this executive order did was it revoked one of President Trump's executive orders where he said we're not going to teach critical race theory and intersectionality. And critical race theory, of course, is you are racist. You can't deny it. It's in your DNA. There's
Yeah.
just nothing you can do.
You're so racist that you don't even realize you're
You don't
racist.
even realize you're racist. You can't walk out the door without having a racist thought in your head. And then, of course, the intersectionality is that if you're white, you're racist. If you're conservative, you're, you're the privileged. If you're a heterosexual, you're homophobic. If you're Christian, you're anti-Semitic. I mean, it's all these things that you are if you're these things, but yet transgender or gay or anything like that, they're lifted up And this is where I think we start getting into this equity instead of equality. You know, if the
Well,
person, go ahead.
they've kind of, I think the intent of it is to silence people that don't score high on the victim scorecard of some sort, right? So so what I think, or what you think as straight male Christian white dudes, is not as important as what maybe a transgender African American, whatever, disabled person, immigrant. So we should be listening to them more than we listen um, to the the masses in essence. So should they have a stronger voice? Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. But does that mean that that the rest of America should be quelled in place of that? And the media plays a big part in this because they drum up conspiracy theories. Everybody's worried about Trump's people being conspiracy theories, but the truth is we're all kind of conspiracy theorists. We just pick different conspiracies, right? So if we're not being genuine and truthful with each other, I just don't see a path through it. And then you have to think to yourselves, how should a Christian, or a church for that matter, I help run a church. How do we negotiate through that? So my goal in picking leadership in my church is that they are saved, obviously, that they're walking a scriptural. We're Bible based church. That they're walking a scripturally sound life, or trying to, at least, right? So we don't. I don't kick people out, or I wouldn't promote somebody for sinning, but I certainly wouldn't promote somebody who lives sinfully. So, and it goes beyond. If you are, there's plenty of people in my church who have been in a monogamous, adulterous relationship for 10 years. They got kids. They're great people. I have them over for barbecues. We hang out all the time. But can they then be in leadership of a church if they're not following the biblical definition of a marriage? The answer is no, and that would go for really any besetting sin that you come across. So I think for churches, we have to pick our people not based on their college degree or the color of their skin or their sexual orientation or anything. We have to pick them on how strongly they live the gospel. Does that make sense?
Sure, it does. And I think that this is where we have to start warning churches that people, they don't have to come into your church and listen to your sermon. They can, like I said, go on your webpage and they can look for things. They can look for your beliefs. You believe, your church may post out there that they believe marriage, the biblical, definition of marriage is between one man and one woman.
Mm.
And that, of course, causes problems to certain people. But then also, like I said, I go to these churches and I look at their webpage and they're all white. So are they racist because they're all white? Or is that the demographics that they're in? Or has nobody come in that, fit the qualifications in their area? I'll tell you a story. Let me just throw this out here. There was a judge in court. She was a new judge, and an officer comes up, and he's it's a traffic officer. So the people that he's issued summonses to are walking up, and she just kind of like starts looking at him, and he's a white officer, and everybody that's coming up is black. And so she stops she stops the court proceedings and goes, "I'm not hearing another one." She says, "You are a racist officer." And he just kind of looked at her and he said, "How do you get that?" And she said, "Every single one of the defendants are black." And he said, "Ma'am, I work in an all black area.
Yeah.
It's not that, if the department sent me to a white area, there'd be all white people coming up here. But
Yeah.
I work in an all black, you know, uh, planning district. I mean, it's all black. There's no whites in here. And so how do you call me racist?" So I think that I worry about the churches, people not even, like I said, having to come in the door will start to think critical race theory and intersectionality is going to play a big part in it, and they're going to start judging us. And
Yeah.
so
And
what happens when they judge us?
I can tell you that those things won't play a part in any church that I run. So, I have well, my congregation is multiracial, plenty of different sexual orientations, and they are welcome in my church, right? They would be welcome in leadership if they displayed leadership qualities, right? So, a leadership quality would be, even if you are uh, same sex attracted, but you don't act on it, right? You don't uh, you're not sexually active in your same sex attraction, or sexually active, by the way, in a heterosexual relationship, means you can't be in leadership as well. So if anybody that believe me, and I'm always looking for leaders, and anybody that displays leadership qualities and a good godly biblical lifestyle, uh, I would love to have them on the team. But I'm not going to go by, we need a certain amount of lesbians, we need a couple of transgenders, we need African Americans. Now, you know, I have African Americans and homosexuals in my family, you know, um, and plenty in my church, man, but none of them have really, said I want to be in leadership. Now, some of them play roles in my church, right? But they haven't told me or requested if they would be in a leadership role. So they might usher, they count money, stuff like that. But they don't want to preach or teach or run ministries or anything like that. Um, that's not it's not up to me. I mean, I'm
And
not going to go out of my way. I'm not going to do the work of the Holy Spirit for them, and neither is Joe Biden in my church.
and I don't think any church out here, and trust me, I'm not trying to say that that's what's happening. I think it's the same thing that you just said. The person that would apply for the position want to lead a men's group, or want to be, work in the children's ministry and be a children's ministry leader. It's the qualifications of the person, and not the color of their skin or their, you know, I think we have to make sure that they're biblical, or they're not sexual predators or things like that. But yet they have to be following in a Christ path. And I think we can both agree on that. It doesn't matter. I fear that churches are going to be pegged because they don't have it. And let me also say this too. There's a church organization that I kind of follow because they do a lot of work with our church. And I was listening to some of their stuff. And this last year, they started talking about diversity. Here's how you diversify your church. And I thought, wow, that's kind of strange. I never really had thought about it. I thought if the right person walked up and applied for the position, they would get that position.
Yeah,
But they're talking about now they want you to diversify no matter what.
and
And so I don't know what the agenda is on that. And that's what concerns me.
it should be. I mean, if it could be, it would be great, and I would never stand in the way of it. But I'll give you two examples of my children's ministry, two different examples of walking into my children's ministry. One time I walked in, and I oversee everything before, as the place starts to come to life, and I say hello and make sure things are in order, that kind of thing. So I go into the children's ministry one night, and my leader is standing by the sign-in desk where a young gender confused kid is painting his fingernails, right? He's painting them pink or purple or whatever he's painting them. Hardly the point, but he's fixing to receive and process kids into my kids' church, and my staff member thinks it's the coolest thing ever. She's laughing and getting a kick out of it and surprised that I was not happy with it. And at the time, my 8-year-old daughter is sitting there watching this whole thing unfold too, indifferent to the situation or stunned or whatever she was. So I had to say, "You're welcome to come to church, but you can't be in leadership and doing this at my desk when you're signing in my kids." And and I had to talk to the staff member. And on a separate occasion, the staff member was my own daughter, and she had an alcohol shirt. I forget what it was, Budweiser, or I'm not a big, I don't know much about alcohol anymore, but um, and I told her, and she was getting ready to sign kids into the kids program, and I said, "You're gonna have to change your shirt or find somebody to replace you. You can't sign the kids in with a Budweiser shirt on. You just
Right.
can't.
Right.
It's just the way it is."
And
And that was my own daughter, and she went to my house, got a shirt, and came back and took care of it. But uh, those are the rules of running a church that's biblically based. I mean, that's the way I run my church, or that's the way we run our church.
so one of the other TCC talks we had on December the 31st, we talked about the restoring constitutional secularism and patriotic pluralism in the White House. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, yeah, that was the Democratic. What were they called? Socialist Democrat? No,
The
Secular Democrats of America.
Yeah, Social Democrats of America, right?
Secular Democrats of America.
Secular, yeah.
Yeah.
And they came in and said that we urge you not to underestimate the institutional strength of what we refer to interchangeably in this document as the Christian nationalist movement or the religious right. This movement is extraordinarily well funded, well organized, and a manifestation of its extreme and sectarian agenda on its constant display under the Trump Pence administration. Its policy ideology is anti democratic, anti scientific, and it provides constant cover for white supremacy.
Yeah. And so there's a couple of problems with that. If I spot white supremacy, I'll address it, right? In church or outside of church, by the
Sure.
way. So,
Sure.
and it's, when I was a plumber, I had, tattoos and my head shaved and I rode a Harley and, I must have looked like some kind of white supremacist because people would say racist things to me thinking that I will then go along and embrace what they're saying. And I would stop working and straighten them out that I take people one at a time. Regardless of the number one, one of the best employees I ever had was a gangbanger out of Detroit. And I still talk to him all the time. A great guy. He was like a son to me. And so the idea that white supremacy is prevalent in America is I think there's white supremacy in America, but it's not part of our institution, right? It's not, we don't have Trump was not a white supremacist. If he was the world's worst white supremacist ever. But the crazy thing about that letter to the Biden administration was that their intent was to break down protections that Trump and Pence wrote into law or executive ordered into law, which I'm not a big fan of. By the way, I'm not a fan of Trump either. But it was to protect religious institutions, right? So the first thing they want to do is to take down these things that protect religion in America. Why do you want to break down those defenses if you aren't planning to go on the attack? So if you believe in freedom of religion and the First Amendment, freedom of assembly, then you should have no problem with those things. So why do they have that problem except that they plan to attack that? It all goes to definitions. What do they call it? Nationalist?
Nationalist.
Yeah, so if a nationalist is somebody that thinks that our president should put our country first, then I'm a nationalist.
Yeah.
Right. I happen to be white. Does that make me a white now? I guess in the loosest definition of the term, sure. But the idea that we would have a president that it would be like hiring a football coach and whose intention was to tie every game, right? The idea that we hire a coach to win, we hire a president to lead our country. And whether I liked Trump or I didn't like Trump, and I mostly didn't like Trump, I found myself rooting for the guy, and he did a pretty good job. And most of the things that they don't like about the guy, they made up themselves, right? It's just insanity. So, again, if they wouldn't have to take down those protections if they wouldn't weaken your defenses if they weren't planning on attacking. How is that one of the first things they're worried about?
And see, this is where it concerns me, and this is where I've made this statement before. I don't have to come in and listen to you as a pastor preach. What I just need to do is drive through your parking lot, because that statement where it just said there that the Trump Pence administration was the cause of this cover for white supremacy. If you have MAGA on your license, your bumper, or Trump Pence for 2020 or any of those type of things like that, that gives the idea to people that under this, not normal people, but under this, that you're a racist church. And they've already started talking about, things to watch for, like Make America Great Again is worn by racist conservative bigots, or the MAGA hat is not a campaign swag anymore. It's a emblem of hate.
Yeah.
Or it's associated with the Confederate flag or swastika. And so when they drive through our churches, because I told you once before on TCT that they would not come after the Second Amendment. They would try to make it to where you could not afford it. And this HR 127 is exactly what I was warning you about. They went, and people, you got to go out and read this. You got to go out and study it, and you got to get out here and make sure that you're
You
telling.
got to watch True Christian Talk.
Yeah,
Subscribe
you got to
to it.
watch True Christian Talk, exactly, because you need to go out here and get on the email. I've got emails and stuff like that of senators and representatives and things like that that you need to send a message to and say, do not allow this thing to happen. Because if they do, we won't be able to protect our churches. I mean, the way that this is set up, you and I, in the professions that we're in, we're not going to be able to afford a gun anymore. And if you're
No,
caught
so
with a gun, the sentencing, the fines and the
it's
penalties
insane.
for it is insane. Yeah.
Well,
So
they've written a bill that will make it so rich people can exercise their Second Amendment right, but poor people, including single moms in the inner city who have no other defense but to own a weapon, won't be able to afford it, even if they had a one of the proposed rules is no handgun with more than 5 rounds. Well, that I can't think of a handgun, maybe a 44 Magnum
no,
revolver.
they have 6. They have 6. Trust
So I
me.
can't think of a 5-round handgun, and I'm kind of a gun guy, but I can't think of a single one.
The old
So
snub nose had 5.
yeah, that
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the old West, like
yeah.
the
Well,
so if
no, the
if
the
you're a
old
poker player in a
detective guns.
saloon,
The
yeah.
old detective guns. They only carried 5.
Oh, they're 38, so they probably have
yeah.
6 too, right?
No, they had 5.
Well, what they need is a little derringer like the poker players in the old West. But at the end of the day, they're hurting the people that are most vulnerable. So, and again, an epidemic of gun crimes is a fallacy. It's made up. I mean, it just statistically, it's just not there.
Right.
So, so they are creating and with their influence in the media, convincing people that this is really true. Uh, so it is again. How would a Christian look at that? How should a Christian approach that? Um, I think that the that if we are protected by a constitution, right, um, and say law enforcement comes to infringe on my constitutional rights, they took an oath to uh, to defend that constitution, and by coming here, they're breaking that oath, right? So then, is it necessary for me to comply to what is essentially an unlawful order? If we were in the military and given an unlawful order, we could be court-martialed for following it,
In the
right? So
police
it's
department, we could be fired. I mean,
yeah.
it's the same thing. Well, and okay, so let's kind of land this plane because I only have 30 minutes on this, like you have on TCT. We have an hour, but
Yeah.
we want to make sure that people can ask questions and stuff like that. What we're saying here is that we need to be watching the political climate of what is being said about churches. To call churches white nationalist extremists or terrorists, which is one of the things that they wanted to show. They said, like, the rise of white Christian nationalism is a national security threat. Whoa, hang on a second.
Well,
Did
where
that
are
come
they?
from?
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's go. I'll lead the way. Let's go get them.
yeah. We recommend you encourage the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice to dedicate resources to derationalization programs, aimed at hate
Okay.
groups, including but not limited to white nationalists. Increase,
Re-education camps.
yeah, increase
If you
monitoring
want to
of.
go conspiracy theory,
Yeah, I know,
that's Stalin, baby. That's
yeah, yeah.
gulags.
But it's just that we as a church have to be aware that these things are happening out here, and we need to be paying attention. As a safety team member, you need to be watching people that just show up at your church. We had this situation that happened a couple of weeks ago. 3 people walked in dressed in all black right before the church service was over with.
Mm.
Just walked in and was in there for maybe 10 minutes and then right back out the door. Who were they? Nobody got a license tag. I happened to be gone that day. And so it was one of these things where who were these people? Maybe nobody at all. Maybe nobody at all. But in today's climate, from what we're seeing, what you and I are seeing, what we're out here reading, I think we need to be paying attention to the churches.
Well, I think the upside is, and the truth is that we as church leaders need to be just as diligent about white supremacy as anybody else, or more so, because it's clearly unscriptural. It's clearly not Christ-like. So we can't be passe or overlook, perhaps having a white supremacist or a racist in our leadership. Now we can't stop them from. I wouldn't stop them from coming to church unless they caused an issue. But I don't stop homosexuals from coming to church. I don't stop anybody from coming to church so long as they understand they're in church and it's a Bible-based church. Now America can take comfort in knowing that me and most pastors would seek out and remove white supremacy at its root within our churches. So just like I wouldn't put a an adulterer in leadership in my Bible-based church, I wouldn't put a white supremacist there either.
Right.
So, and we've
Right.
really got to look at it. What the left calls us is of little consequence to me. So I think we make a big mistake when we allow just them to define all the terms.
Sure.
Um, and by the way, they're very elusive with their definitions, right? So they want reasonable gun control laws. I want reasonable gun control laws. I think we have them, but then they also want to confiscate weapons and, Beto O'Rourke. Heck yeah, we're going to take your AR-15s or whatever. So there's always a duplicity in the argument, and that's where Christians need to be sure, in what's scriptural and what's not scriptural. And we're in an age of deception, and they need to not be deceived.
Well, it's just like the executive order on the equity. Like I said, when you read it, it says equal opportunity is the bedrock of American democracy.
I agree.
Everybody can agree to that. And our diversity is one of the country's greatest strength. We can agree to
Also
that.
agree to that. My
But
mother was an immigrant.
if you don't read any further, you don't think anything about it. Oh, okay, he's past one. He's talking about equality. Okay, fine. We can get along with that. But were we, it's kind of like what we were talking about. Were we that far gone to the other side that we have to put in an executive order to
No.
bring it back? If
And
we were, that's somebody on the government side that kind of did this. An executive order, these are going to be going for federal buildings and people like that, not affecting the church. And really, to tell you the truth, it might not affect a little bit of the public, but it's going to be the public opinion that we have to worry about. That's what we have to watch out for. Because, like I said, if I start reading your web page and things like that, even though you and I don't see it, we truly don't. We look at our congregation and those that want to come in, anybody can come in, any race, color, creed, we don't care. A lot. We're just like what you said. We don't care your sexual preference. Are we going to allow you to work in our children's ministry if you don't fit our biblical based,
no,
teachings? No, no. But we still want you there. I had a guy the other day that said, he can be a troublemaker, but I'd rather have him here, because he might hear the word and it might melt his heart. True. How true is that? We don't want him to be disruptive, but I worry about public opinion. That's where I get it, because they're the ones that'll show up at your church and disrupt your church services.
yeah.
So we just have to be prepared for it.
And understand that these things exist, but to what extent do they exist? And are you brave enough to stand on your faith and fight what something like white supremacy? I think most Christians are.
I think most
I
Christians
don't,
around here, yeah.
unless I've been white my whole life, right? I've worked construction most of my life, and since I was 13 till I was 48 or 49. So, so the question becomes, uh, why have I not been exposed, given the circles that I turn in, prison and ex-cons and recovery community? How have I managed to not be exposed to white supremacy? Yet yet people in Washington who all of their friends make six-figure incomes, regardless of their race or orientation. Everybody inside the Beltway is rich, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so they're very rarely exposed to the people that I'm exposed to, and yet they're convinced white supremacy is everywhere. I turn in these circles, and unless people are particularly careful around me, I don't see it. I mean, I just don't see it. Not very often.
But they go past that point. Just what you just said right there. That's just because you don't know. You don't
Yeah,
know that you don't know that you believe in it.
I'm
You don't.
subconsciously okay with it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's where the battle is. Truly, that's where this doesn't make any sense to us. You come to our church, your church, our church, we want everybody in. We don't stop them at the door and say, whoa, 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 wait a minute. You don't meet
Right.
our pedigree, what we would
Yeah.
consider. You don't make this much money. You're not the right color. You're not this. You're not that. We don't do that. We invite everybody in. I mean,
Well,
we just had a guy. We just had a guy that came in and was talking about finances and tithing and all these things like this. And this lady came up to him who's come to us and talked about her husband hit her. He was arrested for domestic violence. She's kind of struggling, and the guy felt so like you know drawn to help her. He pulled out a $100 bill and he said, "Here, please take this." And she refused to take it. She flat refused to take it. Now, what does that say about the person? That's just, I mean, she was just so, you know, proud, maybe she just didn't want a handout. She'd never asked for a handout before. She was looking for prayer. That was all she was looking
yeah.
for.
Yeah.
So to witness that, we could have easily said, "Hey, get away from him. Don't talk to him. He's written a book and you don't qualify to talk to him." No, she just wanted prayer. It was touching. It was very, I mean, I became emotional just watching her.
Yeah.
But we reach out to the masses. We want people that are hurting, that are tired, that are seeking redemption, seeking peace, seeking comfort, all these things like this. And to turn around and say that we're racist, wow,
Well, and that is, yeah. So do we go back to the individual, taking individuals one at a time? Because I know I talk about him once in a while, but that guy, Steven Anderson, I think he's in Arizona, has a horrible, unchristian gospel message. Horrible things this man says. And I would not have him in my leadership,
right.
right? I would not attend his church. I would not attend it twice anyway. But does he have the right to say those things? Yeah, but do you have the right to say those things in my church? No, right? So it's not like it doesn't exist, but we have to be rational and think in terms of almost you have to be hyper logical. If, by the way, racism is an emotional problem, I'm pretty sure more emotion isn't gonna be the solution. So out emotionaling the other person is not going to get you anywhere. It's going to divide you more and more. So then, how is logic not the response to that? I, by the way, am a Free Methodist pastor, and it is a social justice denomination. I mean, it really is. We were founded on as abolitionists right before the start of the Civil War. So, and we're Wesleyan, and Wesley, John Wesley, stood up against the Anglican Church, where only rich people, well-dressed people, can go to church, and he and George Whitfield started preaching in fields and going into coal mines and that type of thing to preach to everyone, and that is my pedigree theologically. And
Well,
so,
and coming from my background, I think that's how I've always viewed. You look at their hearts, just like you said, that you don't notice the colors, you notice who they are, what they represent. And I think that that's the most important thing that we can continue to do. It truly breaks my heart when people say some of the things that they say right here, because that's not what the church is. I
no,
don't
and
see it. I don't see it in any of the churches that I work in. I do not see it in any of the churches that I work in. And we work in churches all across this country. I don't see it at all.
and
And
it because it exists, and this is where you've got to be very careful. So if the media, the mainstream media, was reading that bill that you just read, they would stop reading at the warm and fuzzy stuff.
yeah,
They would stop reading at the things I agree with as well. That would never make the news, the rest of it. So
right.
um, Christians, if you're, and I'm sure you're watching, Christians, we need to use godly discernment even when we're watching the news. So just because Don Lemon says it's true or Wolf Blitzer says it's true doesn't necessarily mean it's true or even scriptural, particularly not scriptural. So Christians need to, we can't just be lazy and go with the flow. And we got to look to do what does good and stop looking to constantly do what feels good, because we've been misled to think that happiness is the key to life, but meaning and truth is the key to life. Does that make sense?
Well, as I said, stop listening to the news, start listening to God. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my feeling. I think that I can't tell you how many friends of mine had started fasting, and what are they fasting? They're not watching the news. They're not paying attention to it anymore, because it's just it. And you mentioned too that on CNN, But you also have to go to the other side too.
Yeah.
There's some on the Fox channel or, Newsmax or any of them that will start to say something that you just kind of look at and go, that doesn't sound right. So we have to do our homework also.
Yeah.
We as Christians really, we buried our head in the sand for so long. We can't do that anymore. We
Yeah.
have to be paying attention to what is going on because it's going to affect our church somehow. Y- You know, as we talked about, Beto O'Rourke said that if you do not believe in same-sex marriage, he did go back and listen to it. He didn't say if you do not perform same-sex marriage. He says if you do not believe it, we'll strip you of your 501c3 status.
Mhm.
I know our church doesn't believe in it. So do we lose our 501c3 status,
And
But
that would put my little tiny hole in the wall out of business, maybe. I mean,
yeah.
unless the few families that own businesses that support us um, would then continue to do it without the write off, I wouldn't blame them if they didn't. But um, that is scary rhetoric, and that should be, by the way, scary to people on the left as well. So
Could it could turn around and happen to them,
yeah.
the same thing.
And eventually it will. So we've already seen it. We talked about it before off the air that the snake has begun to eat its own tail, right?
Uh,
They
well,
even
yeah.
turned on Obama recently for saying that defunding the police was a dumb idea, and
Well,
they went right after Obama, who is their deity, right? That's the guy that set this whole thing in motion for them.
and you kind of led up to True Christian Talk next Thursday. If you can get your studio fixed, okay? We're we're going to be talking about executive order on preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity and sexual orientation.
Yeah, and it's
And that's another one that's going to affect the churches if you're not careful. If you're not careful.
and if you don't agree with them, Christians, they're going to call you names.
Yes.
And if you are weak in your commitment to your faith and doing the right things and truth, you're going to crumble under that type of pressure. I feel the pressure, and I have no intention of crumbling. So I know people that are, the American church has, like you said, you talked about already. We've acquiesced on so many issues.
Yes.
Our most popular or multi-billion-dollar, million-dollar pastors. I won't use his name, but he runs a big church in Houston. And if you listen to his sermon, you feel great listening to it. You feel great when it's over, but he really doesn't talk about the gospel much. He never uses the J word because it's offensive to people. You can talk about God as much as you like, by the way. It's just not until you mention Jesus that people tighten up and panic. So, and it's because they don't know the gospel message. It's not so much that they don't like it; they rebuke it uh, because they don't know it.
Well, you have to live the right lifestyle. You have to live the Christ-like lifestyle, and nobody wants to do that because if he did want to, you probably wouldn't see him driving around the car he drives around, wearing the suits that he wears, and
He
with
would
his
dress like us.
yeah, yeah. I do have my uniform shirt on somewhere
I do
here.
got new glass. I got new
Yeah,
glasses,
yeah,
$40
yeah,
off.
yeah. Well,
So,
go ahead,
so
please.
the idea that we are that that we are to Christians to stand firm is going to take a degree of self-discipline, right? Um, that self-discipline over time will become spiritual muscle memory. But now more than ever, Christians, you need to know what you believe and why you believe it. You need to be able to, 1 Peter 3:15, give a reasonable defense for the peace of the joy that's within you, if you can do so with gentleness and respect. Um, so we are. I don't watch the news, so it becomes a little bit easier for me because I watch here and there, but not very much of it anymore. But we need to understand you need to have spiritual eyes and spiritual ears in every conversation you have. You need to have them when you study scripture. You need to have them when you're speaking to your enemies and or your friends, and you need to have them when you're watching the news. They are there to mislead you. That's their job.
So wrap it up. Wrap it up. We in
So
some changing times here that we need to be ready for.
well, I'm a big eschatological. I study the end times a lot, and I've always been a guy that says, no, I don't think this is it. I would tell you with fair confidence that we are in a season of a strong delusion. So, scripture talks about people either deceiving and being deceived, and I think that's where we are. So, now more than ever, it's an 11th hour scenario, I think, and Christians need to know what to believe and why they believe it. And that comes through studying the word and nothing else, by the way.
Being in the Word.
Yeah.
Amen.
Don't
Yeah.
take my word for it, or Steven Anderson's or Joel Osteen's for that matter. You've really got, I did it anyway.
You did it anyway.
Yeah. You've really got to, this is a personal, if the gospel message is nothing else, it's a message of personal responsibility. You are saved by your personal relationship with God the Father through the work, through your faith in the work of the cross. That's what it comes down to. So you're not saved because you're from Texas.
Mm-mm.
You're not saved for any other reason except for your faith. So it's a very personal, individual relationship under the new covenant, and Christians need to take it that way.
And we need to protect it. We need to
Yeah,
make sure that we take a stand on some of these things that
yeah,
are coming up. We don't lower ourselves and say, "Oh, okay, that's all right. We've done this, and now look where we're at right now.
yeah.
We've done it for way too long." So,
If you attend a church that is what a pastor I love, Kevin DeYoung, calls the gospel implied church, where since you're at church, the gospel is implied. You don't have to mention it, but they have a Starbucks and a gymboree for the kids and all that. If you attend a church that is light on the gospel, I would say Christians, I would tell you to find another church, find a church that is scripture centered. Now in this 11th hour, you're going to need that.
that's true. All right, so let's open it up. Wendy, anybody out there got any
There
questions?
are no questions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm not
None.
sure we're streaming. I didn't get an alert.
It didn't go. It didn't go through Facebook. It just didn't make it. So I don't know what happened. Technical difficulties have been hitting us all day long, Kevin. It really has. So
It's like a solar
I,
pulse hit Tampa Bay, and
I
everything I've tried to do has been a handful
I
electronically.
was reading something on one of the news channels that said Russia was building up those EMPs.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if they hadn't just sent one over here that
Yeah,
might have caused all these difficulties that we're
a little
running into.
test run. Well, you
Uh,
sound like a conspiracy theorist, Jim. Now we can talk.
oh,
I so want to be a conspiracy guy. I just don't believe them.
all right. All right. Well, if nobody has anything else, Kevin, thank you so much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
I will
having me,
be in
buddy.
touch with you real soon. Thanks for sharing that with me. I'm just going to go through our some stuff that we have coming up. I'm going to bring back up the PowerPoint. So just hang on. Let's see if it works. So I will talk to you in a little bit.
I love you, brother. See you.
Love you too, bro. All right. So this Saturday, February 6th, from 9 o'clock a.m. to 11 o'clock a.m., we're going to be at Gulf Coast Community Church at 555 76th Avenue North in St. Petersburg. Come on out. We're going to be talking about some of these things like here, some current events, some things that we've seen in our church that we've been following. So we want to make sure that if you're in that area, please come out. We'd love to see you. All right. Now, starting next week, we're going to be going to our church safety networking group is going to be going to different churches in the different counties here. And we're going to be I'm going to be going with Alan Wilkett. I'm going to let him talk as much as he wants to. And we're going to be talking about identifying red flags in your houses of worship. Now, those will be at 4 different locations at this time. On Tuesday, February the 9th, from 7 o'clock p.m. to 8:30 p.m. will be in Vineyard Christian Church at 375 South Broad Street in Brooksville, Florida. On Thursday, February the 11th, 2021, at 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m., we'll be at Generations Christian Church in the Gathering at 1540 Little Road here in Trinity. That's my church. And on on Saturday, February the 13th, from 9 o'clock a.m. to 10:30 a.m., we'll be at Scott Lakes Baptist Church, 5811 Scott Lake Road in Lakeland, Florida. And then on Thursday, February the 25th, from 7 o'clock p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m., we'll be at New Day Christian Church at 2112 Peachland Boulevard in Port Charlotte. Okay. We need to talk members only. We will be having our Zoom meeting on February the 18th. This is for members only. So if you're a member, you'll be getting an email from us and we'll invite you out and we'll be talking. This is going to be a Zoom meeting, so you can come online and you can talk about things that you're seeing or things that you're noticing or things that you would like to ask, questions that you'd like to ask. This will be an in-person Zoom meeting. We are so close. We're sending this book to the printer. We're very excited about it. So you can pre-order this. Go to TrinitySecurityAllies.com. You can receive a paperback copy for $25 donation. Now, let me say this, the hardcover, there's only going to be a few of those. It's going to be a limited edition. So if you want one right now, get out there and order one because they're going soon. Free resources. If you go to our Trinity Security Allies, you'll see that we have putting together a safety team, developing a safety team, carrying of weapons in church, and Sunday morning, what to look for. These are free. If you're thinking about doing a safety team, this is a place to go and start, then contact us on the rest of it. Okay, online membership program. Sign up today to access our online church safety training library for just $25 a month. Live online training you can access at any time and share with your team. A membership will also give you a ticket to our annual church safety and liability conference, and a membership just supports our ministry. For churches, church and safety and security membership program, it's $125 a month or $1,200 for the year, which includes two-hour training sessions or a full day training session, scheduled phone consultations on safety concerns as needed, 5 tickets to the annual church safety and liability conference, discounted full strength and weakness assessment with recommendations detailing priorities in your house of worship. And the safety team, your whole safety team has full access to online library and monthly member only calls. So as Kevin and I were talking about, we have True Christian Talk, which is on Thursday at 11 o'clock a.m. We talk about the issues that are facing Christians today. We really don't get into the church safety. We leave that to Trinity Security Allies. So please, if you have the opportunity, come out on Thursdays and hear some of the things that we're covering. Like we said, this next week, we're going to be doing executive order on preventing and combating discrimination on the basis of gender identity and sexual orientation. You need to listen to this one. You need to come out because we're going to have a teacher that is here in Pinellas County who does girls basketball, girls track, and what it's about and how it could affect all of our schools. Okay. We are also on YouTube, so you can go and check us out on YouTube. And of course, always go to Kevin's God Logic Project, like his stuff. Kevin's got some incredible stuff where he talks about things that are facing the churches also in the ministry aspect of it and what we have to be careful about. He has a lot of great guests out there. He's had me on a couple of times, but he continuously has great groups. All right. I want to say one thing. We are going to get rid of our Facebook Live on Sunday. We just feel that because of True Christian Talk and doing our webinars or our Zoom calls on Thursday night, we're going to concentrate on those so that we can give you a better product. We felt like we were kind of pulling ourselves back and forth on some of these things. And so what we want to do is that we want to bring it all together on Thursday night. So we'll be continuing to do these. We're going to stop doing the Facebook Lives on Sunday night. We hope that you'll come out on Thursday night and follow us here. And as always, we appreciate all your support in prayer and whatever, you can do to help us continue this ministry. We've been very blessed by all of y'all that are out here. We thank you very much for it. And we look forward to serving you for the rest of our time until God says I can retire. And right now he's not giving me that kind of clue. So thank you for coming out tonight. Be blessed, bless this country, bless you, be safe, and we'll talk to you again next week.